Hello, everybody. My name is Rosie, and welcome to Turn On the AC, a podcast where we talk about what it is to be an Asian Christian creative navigating through life in today's modern society. We hope to create community, inspire, challenge, and encourage our fellow creatives with each episode. Hi, guys. Welcome back to Turn On the AC podcast. I am so excited today because I have one of the most sweetest and treasured friend of mine, Grace Wong. And Grace is like a little sister to me, and I love her so much. She is a Taiwanese American. She is the founder of Littlejoy Media. And if you guys don't know, Littlejoy Media, it runs ads on Facebook and Google for social justice related organizations, businesses, and nonprofits. She has a passion for the entertainment industry and aspires to use her creative gifts and storytelling to bring awareness to human trafficking and sexual harassment in the workplace. She has been on countless sets and in the past as a production sound mixer, but she has shifted her interest from behind the screen to being in front of it. So she is currently an actor in training. She was born in New York, but grew up in Massachusetts. She loves K-pop and Korean food and is an Enneagram 3 now. And Grace, thank you so much for being here. Your love for Jesus, the way that our friendship has grown throughout the years is one that I treasure and value so much. So it's been a blessing to be a part of your life and to see you grow from the sound mixer and then wanting to pursue acting. And so with that, I want to start off with the first question. What is one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you, Rosie, for having me on your podcast today. This is super exciting.
Of course.
And I'm looking forward to the awesome conversation that we're going to have.
Thank you.
But to answer the first question, I think one piece of advice I would give to my younger self, as cliche as this sounds, I would say to her, don't sweat the small stuff. Because I think in the past, like middle school, high school, there's just certain things that middle schoolers and high schoolers and even like young college students value that can seem like it's their entire world. And I've definitely fallen into that rabbit hole of just like one thing or like one plan is where my life revolves around. But ultimately realizing like months or years later that it doesn't actually matter as much. So I would definitely say to my younger self, don't sweat the small stuff. And I think that would have reduced a lot of unnecessary stress and pressure that I felt in the past. And also, like, if God wanted something to happen, it will happen. I myself don't need to go out of my way and like break every bone to make it happen. It's just going to happen because God wants it to happen. So yes, don't sweat the small stuff. In the long run, ultimately, a lot of the things that I think I worried about when I was younger just ultimately was not relevant. So that's what I would say.
I love that, especially with you saying that God will make it happen, and for you not to stress over trying to make it happen for yourself. So what has God been revealing to you recently?
Oh, I love this question. Yeah, I think what comes to mind immediately is the verse Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. I know is a huge chunk of this verse. But I say that because I feel so in the past and now also I feel like I am somebody who is sensitive to when God speaks to me. So there are instances where I'll audibly hear his voice in my head, or there will be situations where I'm stressed or upset, and then I'll just feel him speaking to me. And there was this instant recently that was stressful, and this was the verse that just came up, and I have not I have not been reading Psalms recently. I'm in other chapters of the Bible right now. But it just came up to me, be still and know that I am God. And it's been popping up for me multiple times throughout the day ever since, in different situations in my life. But I think that I also have to be aware of the line between procrastination and laziness
Mhm.
versus being proactive and still being still.
Yeah.
Because I think I can mistake it sometimes as, okay, I'm going to relax and I'm going to let go. This means I don't have to like proactively do anything, but I think I still do have to take the steps, and receive what God has laid out before me, the doors that He opens. So I have to be proactive, but I don't need to like stress myself out and worry and just be unnecessarily anxious about it. So,
No, I love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I love that verse too, to be still, know that I am God. It definitely grounds me, and it kind of goes back to what you're saying, that we can't do everything. And when we do, it's like, why am I not good enough? And it goes back to our worth, and in a sense of like, I'm not doing enough. But God is like, be still, know that I am God, I'm the creator. And it's so true, like what you're saying. There is a fine line between procrastinating and like waiting on God. And I love the term to actively wait, because in the waiting you're still being active, but you're also not like trying to make everything happen for you, if that makes sense. Like you're just kind of planning the steps, but the Lord will guide your steps. Or is that the verse? It was like, make the plans, but the Lord guides your step. Yes, that's it. So thank you so much for sharing that. Could you also share a bit of your testimony, how you found Jesus, how He's helped you through your creative journey, and where He is leading you now?
yes. So how I found Jesus, my mom started bringing our whole family to church when we were young.
Mm.
It was a Baptist church, a Southern Baptist to be specific. But I wouldn't classify myself as a Baptist, more so non-denominational,
Mhm.
because I honestly don't really know the differences, other than we all serve the same one true God. And to me, that's what's most important. So growing up in that church has been an integral part of, me finding Jesus. And I made my own faith probably at some point in high school. I know that youth group and my youth group leaders, Bible camps and youth conferences, were a really important part of my journey in my faith, but it wasn't really until college, my freshman year of college, that I really solidified and grew into a deep personal relationship with God.
Mm.
And I would say when I was looking at colleges, I was really, you know, inexperienced, a senior in college. And I think being Asian American, there is a sort of pressure for you to quote unquote perform well,
Mhm.
because, you know, being an Asian American, you're in these Asian American communities and your parents' friends will inquire and you don't want to embarrass yourself or your parents, by going to a quote unquote bad school. I think that was like a mentality that I had when I was like in middle school, or high school. So for so part of my creative journey, or to speak more into that, um, I was going to go to Baylor, down in Waco, Texas, a school that I really loved at the time. Um, and I'll be honest, like at that time, like all I wanted was to be able to go to like a prestigious school so that like our community of people would like it would just bring more like, I don't know what the word is, but like in Asian American communities, it's like there's a lot about like prestige and like
Mhm.
level. And so, um, that played a lot into why I wanted to go to Baylor. And I was going to go there. I had made my deposit and everything, but actually, in the end, I didn't end up going there because of certain family circumstances, and it was
Yeah.
super hard for me
Mhm.
to accept. And at that time, I already knew that I wanted to pursue the entertainment industry. And out of all the schools that I applied to, only Baylor had something related to like digital media. And so I was like, okay, so I guess this means that the door is going to be closed to me.
Mm.
I ended up going to UNH in New Hampshire, which I ended up loving and where I found a piece of myself through God. And I didn't know that this would happen. Um, and the crew ministry there was amazing. And I think God knew that I wouldn't be where I was today if I went to Baylor, even though that was all I saw. And I wanted to go to Baylor for all the wrong reasons as well.
Uh-huh.
So it ended out perfectly. Years later, like here I am. And but I think it was tough for me as an 18-year-old to accept at the time when college acceptances was my whole world then. But I think looking back now, I would never ever change anything that happened because God brought me through um, ultimately 3 different schools. I'm a transfer student,
Yeah.
3 different experiences, 3 different college ministries to get me to where I am today. And as for the creative side, everything fell into place because of my unconventional college career. I think most people just like apply to college, they go to one school, they stay there, they graduate. But I was at a different school like for 3 schools and like 3 different semesters. Um, but yeah, so I ended up going to or I the last school that I ended up at was at the Boston University Film School in God's timing, and I learned like everything that I needed to, and then opportunities to act and to pursue entertainment start to show up. So I think a long-winded answer comes down to this, and that's that God is taking time with my career, but strategically, and his strategy is not always the strategy that the world thinks is the best strategy.
So good. Yeah. I love that. And yay to transfer students because I'm also a transfer student as well. And it's like the non traditional way, but I love that you see that it is God's plan in the right timing. How was it like transitioning schools? Like, was it hard to adjust? And how did you find a Christian community in each school?
Yeah, so the first school that I went to in New Hampshire, that was difficult because I was fresh out of like, oh, I'm not going to Baylor anymore. It was in the suburbs of New Hampshire. It was so
Mm.
beautiful. It was very peaceful. Um, and my childhood neighbor actually went to the same school, and so she was telling me, "Oh, there's this ministry called Crew. Just come and check it out." And so that's how I knew knew what Crew was,
Mm.
and so that's how I got plugged in. And when I was done with that semester, I transferred to UMass Amherst here in Massachusetts, and the Crew at New Hampshire knew some of the people in Massachusetts, so that's how I got plugged in. I would say UMass is very similar to UNH in terms of being in the suburbs, beautiful campus, but it was a lot bigger than the school in New Hampshire. Um, and then after that, I transferred straight into Boston, like the city. So that was like really different. People at UMass didn't really know people at BU, or I wasn't connected, so I had to find my own way there.
Mm.
Um, but it's funny because at the end of every semester, so I would have a hard time transitioning at the beginning of every semester,
Mhm.
school after school after school. But by the end of that semester, I would be sad that I was like leaving
Mm.
that school.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately the change was necessary. The change was good. And I have like friends and connections from like everywhere now. So that's been like a really like beautiful part of my like very unconventional college career.
I love it. I love how you get to have all these connections in like different places, you know? And of course, like with your presence, you're so amazing. So I'm pretty sure everyone who meet you loves you. Absolutely.
Thanks, Rosie.
Of course. So could you tell us more about how you got into storytelling and sound and acting and how you knew that this was something that you wanted to pursue?
Mhm. So I wanted to be an actor since the 8th grade.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cute.
So I had auditioned for my very first play. It was like a fall play in middle school, and I landed a pretty decent role in the play. And ever since then, I never really stopped wanting to be an actor, but I think I lacked the background, the resources, and the knowledge of where to go or how to find the resources to help me get to where I wanted. And I think just growing up in an Asian American family, there's like these certain stereotypes with Asian American children pursuing the creative arts. It's not like
Yeah.
something that's like highly like sought after
Yeah.
due to like financial stability and whatnot.
Mhm.
But it wasn't until I got into BU film school that I felt like I had built finally a solid foundation to pursue a career in entertainment. There were a lot of student films happening every weekend, and I just went on set after set after set every single weekend. And sound mixing was one of the first skills that I learned in film school. And I realized that the audio industry was pretty and still is pretty male dominated and not very diverse. So that kind of instilled in me this passion to be a woman in sound, but also
Yes.
but also an Asian American woman in sound because those are pretty non-existent
Mm.
in the American sound industry. But as I was going through film school, I still had that burning desire in me to pursue acting, and it didn't really go away. I think I was afraid to face that desire because I still didn't know how I was going to do it.
Mhm.
I went to school for film and not for acting. But I was in film school, which was very close to like the acting world, and it had doors for me to open and walk through to reach that acting space. So roughly a year ago, I decided to go all in and pursue training and mentoring programs that would help me pursue it. And I knew that this was what I wanted to pursue because it really does make me feel alive and it
Mm.
fits into what I want in a career, but it also feels right, and I don't feel dangerously anxious about it, and I think that usually is a tip off for me, and I know also for a lot of other people, is that if I don't feel a sense of peace about something, if there's something just off or wrong, and I think this also goes to relationships too,
Mhm.
um, I know that there's just, like, something up there, but with this, I just feel it feels right and
Yeah.
peaceful. Also, like, I think God has just been providing everything I've needed so far. I hadn't had to, like, break my back to, like, achieve or to obtain anything, so,
Yeah.
yeah,
So good. Yeah. It just goes back again to your first answer of like, God will make it happen, you know? And He really does. And I think we've both experienced that where He just opened up so many doors. And we're kind of like, we didn't, we worked for it, yes, but it was also amazing that we get these opportunities to do that. And for those who don't know, me and Grace did 8 parables together. And so that's how we know each other. And that's how we grew into this friendship. And we worked on a film together for like 4 days. Total complete strangers on day one. I mean, we had like Zoom calls or Google Meets as well, and with the whole cast and crew. But then, like day four, we were deep in with like our sistership and our friendship. So it's definitely amazing, and that was an experience. I feel like we both were like, God opened this door for us.
for sure, for sure.
So, how did your parents feel about you pursuing the creative field? Were they always supportive, or did they have to like come around to accept it?
Well, I think that I classify myself as incredibly lucky,
Mm.
blessed, however one might want to call it. My parents are my A plus number one supporters. I
Oh.
think growing I think growing up, my mom especially worked hard to not be as restraining as I think other Asian American parents, might be,
Mhm.
and there are stereotypes with Asian parents, and even though my own parents did carry some of that culture over in their past into raising my sister and I think that they did their best to support, both of us in pursuing whatever we wanted, and I would say, like, my mom especially understood that whatever fears about finances and future stability, all of the usual parental worries about their kids pursuing something in the creative arts. I think she recognized that a lot of that wasn't going to be in her control, but in God's hands and in God's control. And so she trusted that. And I think that's why she and my dad have been supportive of me pursuing the creative arts. But also recognizing when we had the conversation of me pursuing the creative arts, like, a few years ago, I recognized that they were, like, there is on some level some, like, nervousness there, but, also, like, they knew that this was totally, like, going to be something not in their control ultimately.
Mhm.
Um so and also just starting my own production company and ad agency hybrid. I've honestly been very blessed. They've been super supportive, all the way through. So yeah.
That's awesome. I love that your parents are supportive. I think every Asian parents, once they hear that their kid wants to go into the creative field, they're a little skeptical because they're like, wait a minute. It's like a very, yeah, like we're not sure if they're going to be successful, but that's awesome that they were able to like trust in you and know that no matter what, you're still going to go in this career path that you feel that God was calling you to. And can you tell us more about this transition that you made from sound mixing to acting? Was there any doubts, and how did you overcome those doubts and the obstacles?
Yeah, sure. So sound mixing is very different from acting.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of doubt as there was like fearfulness. I think there was some dread in there too. I had some dread and some fear because I was hoping that, oh, me being in film school would make me want to be a filmmaker, maybe like a film director, sound mixer more than I wanted to be an actor because I was afraid of the seemingly very low quote unquote success rate for
Mm.
Asian American women, especially like a double minority wanting to be an actor.
Yeah.
So I had fear, but the desire ultimately like drove me to pursue professional acting training first just to get started, because I had to start somewhere. It's still a learning process and I'm still learning every single day, and I do it every day by bringing my dreams before God and actively
Mm.
pursuing it in my best efforts, but also holding it loosely in my hands, knowing that God could change anything. He could take it away. He could do anything he wanted in my life at all times. So that's why, like, I'm pretty locked in on my goals and my ambitions, but also holding it loosely in case he wants to come and like change anything. But I think prayer is powerful. It's how I get through it. And I don't think that I necessarily see or remember that sometimes, but
Mm.
sometimes prayer is like the one thing between me or you as in generally speaking, you
Yeah.
and the next thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Yeah, I like what you said about bringing your dreams to God, because I think a lot of us, especially me, I forget to even pray about it, and I have to remind myself that before I make a decision, is it for myself or is it for God's kingdom? You know. So it's so good that you bring that up, and so with acting, can you give us some tips and advice for to anyone or somebody who wants to be an actor and actress but isn't sure where to start?
Yeah, so I would say if money isn't too big of a problem, I would say sign up with some online acting coaches or online acting coaching programs. You can totally search that up via the internet, Google. You do not absolutely need to go to acting school and pay like 40 grand a year to go to undergrad acting.
Mm.
Totally do not need to do that. There are a lot of acting studios that specialize in acting techniques. Meisner technique, just to throw one out there. There's the Stella Adler Studio in New York, and just a lot of other method acting studios around. You could search that up on Google. I know that there are online coaches, Wendy Elaine Wright, Jodie Bentley, just to name a few. And these are very niche and made for actors by experienced acting coaches who are sometimes actors themselves too. And I would say subscribe to some acting coach blogs like Bonnie Gillespie and Andrew Hurl, and also feel free to sign up for acting classes because acting classes is where you get to hone your craft. And you can usually find some locally around you if you search up acting classes near me, literally as simple as that. And every state has a film commission. So if you search up your state, like for example, California, and then type in film commission, you can actually find their contact page and then contact them and ask for any recommendations on acting classes. And also joining Facebook groups is another great like tip. A lot of knowledge, free knowledge can be pulled out from these. You can literally search up actors group in LA or actors group in Chicago, actors of Boston. Just like I'm throwing out random examples on
Yeah.
Facebook, and a bunch of them will pop up, and you can join them, and then you can network with other actors. And as for auditioning, if you don't know where to start, I know that I had that problem before, but student films on college campuses with film programs, they always need actors. And so that's a really great area to kickstart your acting career and get more experience.
Yes, as being a film student, I mean, I was a communications major, but I took film courses and we definitely needed actors. Yeah, I especially wanted more Asian actors, and it's hard to find that, especially in Kansas. It's very difficult, and so it's. I love those resources that you give because it's you don't have to go to school for it. I mean, you can if you want to, but you started off with just like going online, finding your resources, joining a Facebook group. It's very simple things that we can all do if we're very interested in wanting to be that. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
And that leads into my next question with Asian representation. Do you think or do you feel that your ethnic and cultural background plays a big role in the things that you create? Or do you feel that your faith plays a bigger role in the things that you create?
That is a great question, Rosie. I think that in the past, I would say my faith played a bigger role in the things that I was trying to create. But
Mhm.
after joining a cohort of Asian American creatives through Eight Parables, which if people are unfamiliar with Eight Parables, they are this initiative slash brand agency. Um, 8parables.com. Just
Yes.
putting a plug. So after, and that was also where Rosie mentioned this earlier, that's how we met. Um, I think ever since our Eight Parables retreat or making that film, I was able to embrace my Asian American background further. So I think moving forward, I would definitely love to tap into that more because I think the whole cohort, you and the others have really like encouraged me to like be proud of being like who I am, an Asian American woman, having this like background, which is something really special. So
Yes, I love that. I mean, I love everything you're saying. Did you struggle with, because you talked briefly about embracing your Asian American or your Asian side. What was the struggle for you with that, if you don't mind elaborating?
yeah, I think I I struggled with being proud of being Asian American, and I struggled for a while
Mm,
on just embracing myself as Asian American, um because I think there were just a lot of instances just like growing up where like being Asian American really made me stood out, but not in the best way possible. I just never felt great about that. And so it was my ethnic background wasn't something that like I wanted to make a huge deal out of like when I was in college and pursuing film. I would go on these sets and I would just pursue my like career, do school, do college, without wanting to make like my ethnic background such a big deal.
yeah.
But then I would see things like Wong Fu Productions and like their creative content, and then just joining Eight Parables and just really just like realizing, wow, this is something like super special about me. Like I have this multi-ethnic background. I
Mhm.
can speak two languages, and this is like something to tap into more because I think people have been telling me like right now in this day and age is the best time to like to embrace diversity with everything that's happening in Hollywood and like around us. So
Yes, representation matters for sure. So it's really awesome seeing you pursue that in your field, and especially when you're talking about for the sound mixing business or the sound mixing jobs, like it's mostly like a man field. Does that make sense? A man field.
yeah, a dominated male industry.
Yes, dominated male industry. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
a man field. What is that? But yeah,
Manfield.
yeah, a lot of these things are definitely nice to see, especially with like the new Shang-Chi movie and Mulan, even though I heard Mulan was not represented very well. Or Crazy Rich Asians. So it's nice seeing all of this, and so thank you so much for sharing that. We're gonna dive a little bit more into what Little Joy Media is, and if you don't mind, could you tell us what it is, the name, the purpose of Little Joy Media, and what made you want to start this business?
Yeah, so those are all great questions. I love talking about Little Joy Media. Also abbreviated LJM. So Little Joy, I came up with the name because I realized something about myself was that I find really big joys in really small things.
Mm.
Like I experience like really euphoric highs when I like for example eat something sweet like a donut, like something as simple as just eating like chocolate, or when I see a beautiful sunset, when I see a friend that I love, and it just fills me up. And I realize that in society, it's easy to become jaded
Mm.
from things that surround us. It's easy to not be like, oh, this donut, for example, I'm eating is good. And then further recognize I am so blessed that I can feel like the sweetness, the tastiness of this donut. And that's
Yes,
literally
yeah.
what goes on inside my head when I eat a donut. If you couldn't tell, I love donuts.
She does. She does. I'm there to witness.
And what I wanted to do with Little Joy is that I wanted to inspire people to find joys in the simplest, the littlest things in life, because I think that's so easy to forget. But ultimately, my long-term goal is to create content around this concept.
Mm.
But currently, Little Joy Media is a production company, advertising agency hybrid that assists businesses and organizations fighting for social justice, or businesses that support the movement of social justice. So we run strategic ads through Facebook and Google, and we also work with clients to tailor specific solutions to their acquisition needs. And I think you asked about why I wanted to start this business.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wanted to start a business because Originally, it stemmed from I don't want to do the same thing every single day at a corporate job.
Mhm.
And I wanted, because I think I'm someone that wants to go into work every day and have something different to do, and but also have those things be exciting for me. And I think that's part of the reason why I love the entertainment industry so much and I love working in it, is because every day brings something new and you don't know what's going to happen. And I wanted to do something that would complement my acting work. So, for example, I also help organizations and businesses through Littlejoy, like anti trafficking nonprofits, for example. And that actually aligns with my acting brand because I usually go for the darker roles, like the victimized roles, the thriller, the sad, the gloomy heartbreak role. So that
Mhm.
is part of my acting brand. And I think running a full fledged company is really hard. There are moments, I'm gonna be honest, where I just don't want to do anything anymore, but also I don't really have a choice because it is my job. And I feel like I've pushed myself into this corner where no matter what, I have to keep going, which I think is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I'll ask myself, am I going to give up because it's
Mm.
hard?
Yeah.
And I think that my relationship with God is an immense part of this journey because even when I don't want to do it anymore, um, my one big hope that I have is that if all fails, if everything collapses like today, my hope is that even then that failure brings God the greatest glory and points people to him. And like something that I realized is that if God is not part of the plan for Little Joy, then I don't want it.
Mm.
Um, he has to be part of it in order for it to achieve what it's meant to, which can be something great. So,
Yeah, such a beautiful reminder. I love what Little Joy Media stands for, and um, just how you want it to glorify God in all that you do. And so, what are your hopes for this business?
yeah, I want to be able to get to this point where we can self-finance our own documentaries and our own
Mm.
short films. And what I mean by that is because Little Joy fights against human trafficking and fights for social justice, I want to be able to bring more awareness into this arena, like sexual harassment in the workplace, human trafficking, the nuances of that. And I think one of the best ways to do that is through storytelling, through documentary storytelling. So my hope is that down the line, we're going to be able to self finance those projects.
That's awesome. I can't wait till I get to that point of view, like making documentaries and short films. It's going to be great because Grace is such a visionary. So, going back into acting, you briefly mentioned that you go for like the darker roles. Why choose those roles or have that be your focus?
Yeah, I think I've always just felt okay. Well, first of all, I think my favorite genre is along the lines of thriller, just like the dark stuff. I do like horror as well. It's funny because I'll always want to go see a horror movie and nobody wants to go.
Yeah, I'm not a horror movies fan.
Yeah, but I love like thriller, I love dark stuff. I love like really sad storylines, but then how the characters come out of that like brokenness.
Mm.
And so I just with books too, books and movies, I kind of just gravitate towards that genre. And so I feel with my acting brand, I want to represent that I want to represent characters in that kind of space, and how empowered like they can be when they come out on the other side. And yeah, and I feel like what Little Joy does complements that really well because a lot of the stuff that we try to fight against is really dark, is really like broken. And
Mm.
so yeah, there's like definitely like a connection there.
Yeah, how do you channel that character from because I love your personality. Your personality is so bright and bubbly, and then for you to be this darker character, how do you channel that into this character?
Yeah, I give a lot of credit to my acting training. So I train the Meisner technique. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, so Sanford Meisner is one of the, I guess, quote unquote, founding fathers of acting. Like years and years ago, like in the last century. And his technique, a lot of it is based on this concept of living truthfully under the circumstances. And so I am professionally training in that right now. It's like an extensive perpetual program that training that I'm in. And it teaches me a lot about getting my body, my emotions, my head, my mindset into that space when I need to. And then when that scene is over, like I have to be able to pull myself out of it and recognize, yep, it's done. The story's done. And, I feel like a lot of it is also being like a professional. Like you have to know where the line is drawn.
Mm.
And that, like, sometimes, yes, it can feel real. And I think that's when, like, and I think that is how, like, you see these actors on screen and they're able to cry, like, in specific scenes. It's because they are fully immersed into it, because they are living truthfully in that circumstance. But once the director yells cut, you have to bring yourself out of it because it's done.
Yeah. I remember watching Hannah on the set of, Eight Parables for our film Dirty Laundry, and I just remember that she had to get into that mindset because it was a really, like, dark scene, her and Jason too, especially in the car. I was in there with them in that scene behind with, Francisco and Felipe, but I just remember they had to take a moment and just kind of, like, reset to now that they're these characters and not them. And I found that so interesting to see because you really do have to get into that mindset, as you were saying, like, living truthfully in the circumstance. Like, right now, that's their truth in the circumstance, like, that's how they feel. So
Exactly, exactly.
so good. How do you balance running a small business, acting, doing education, and your personal walk with God? I know you're graduated now, but, congratulations, by the way.
Thank
How
you.
do you balance all of that?
Yeah, well, I'm still an acting trainee in the Meisner technique. So technically, I guess the education portion. So that is continued, but I am graduated from, like, school, like undergrad, college. I think a lot of it is I have like a daily routine that I go through. I wake up at 5:30 every single morning.
Ooh, so
Um,
early.
yeah, and I think, like, my body is used to that, like, earliness, so it even if I, like, go to bed late, it's still, like, my circadian rhythm, or, my inner biological, like, internal component. I just wake up at that time,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
when I wake up at that time, it gives me, like, breathing space in the early morning to do my quiet time. So I usually do my quiet time, and I read my Bible in the morning. I do my reading, like, if I have any, like, news that I have to read, or just like recreational reading, answer emails, and then, like, my day would usually start roughly around like 8:45, 9 a.m. And that's when I start, like, my official work for Littlejoy Media.
Mm.
And then my acting is, like, scheduled throughout the week, like, they're already scheduled. I use my calendar, but I would say the biggest thing is that um, I'm consistently waking up at the same time every single day, and that's what creates, like, this space for me to do everything the way that I've kind of always done it.
Yeah, so good. And how do you spend your quiet time? I know you said you spend it in the mornings with God, but when you kind of want to get away from the acting and just like the film aspect or the creativity part, do you spend it still creative or is it the opposite? Like you try to go on a hike or something else? Like what do you do?
Yeah, so I love trail walking. I think anytime when like I'm back home, or if any of my friends are visiting, like, and they ask me what I want to do, I always just pick some place, like some new trail, and that's where we'll go. Like we'll just go on a walk. And I read, I would say trail walking and reading. I love reading. I like violently read all the time. I have a Kindle. Um, and of course I love reading thrillers. I love reading dystopians, and just like mystery. So those are the two things that I use for my own like personal quiet time.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Grace is definitely a great hiker or a great trailblazer. We've hiked together, and for sure, she has so much more energy than me. I just remember we hiked to the Hollywood sign, and
Yeah, that was so
literally,
fun.
she was way up there, and I was way back there. I wanted to give up, but her being her, she just kept going, and it made me want to continue. So
Yeah,
I
that
love
was
that.
quite a day. That was like, man, there were like 30,000 steps in there.
I know, and you still were able to run or like, do a light jog. Me, I
Yeah,
was like catching my breath like every time we
yeah,
stopped. It's so funny.
so
So, you've been on multiple sets and you've been a part of different types of cast and crew members. What have you noticed from working and being on a Christian set to being on a non-Christian set? And do you struggle or did you struggle with working on a non-Christian set? And how do you bring your faith into that environment?
mm. I think on a Christian set, there's definitely a sense of overarching peace that,
Mm,
in a way, a non-Christian set, I don't necessarily feel that. I'm not saying that that's wrong or that's bad, but I do feel there is this like stillness, this peace when I'm on a Christian set. Like even if we know, oh, the sound was terrible on that take, or if the camera batteries die, or this happens or that happens, there's this like sense of yes, it will be okay because this is for God and God
mm,
does not let his projects fail, even if we as humans will think
mm.
it's a failure because what we
Okay.
deem as what we deem as a failure might not be what God thinks as a failure. Just like I think how God doesn't really concern himself with outward appearances, but rather inward, like what's inside our hearts. I think we as humans might value in a film. I think what we as humans value in a film on set might not always be what God values on a set. And I think that's really special. And I think non-Christian sets are fun. I learned a chunk of like my technical skills from there, sound mixing. And I think being with non-Christians in the film industry is imperative because it gives us a space to learn from them and their stories and then in turn share our stories and have this opportunity to share about the truth with them. And I feel like it also humbles us in a way. I think the world, or I guess worldly views on like the entertainment industry, it's all like, oh, the Oscars win film festivals, there's this glitz, glam, fame and fortune, all of these award shows. Um, Whereas God is like, you know, there's all these eternal rich if you trust me, if you accept me, you have eternal life. There's all these eternal riches and they're more than you can ever imagine. Um and his way is higher than our ways. We can't really ever understand what his ways are. We can't. Um so I just kind of think about like, wow, like what greatness does he even have in store for us? Because we can't even fathom that. Um, but yeah, I kind of digressed a bit there, but I would say like on Christian sets there is that like overarching piece, that like affirmation that I feel.
Mhm.
On non-Christian sets, I definitely do feel a level of like like geared up stress, but it's not necessarily bad. They're just like different different spaces, different feelings. I wouldn't necessarily say that I've ever struggled hardcore on a non-Christian set, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you on you saying that when we create for God, when the film is for God, there's more peace in the sense of like because even though we think it's a mess, God doesn't in that sense. And it's so true because I've worked on different sets as well, like non-Christian sets, and it's a huge difference from comparing it to our eight parables experience where we talked about our highs and lows throughout the days. We prayed before the set or the shoot. We prayed after the shoot. And I think those are so powerful. And in each moment, we were like, wow, that was such a God moment in our lives. And that's so true because you don't see that on a non Christian set. It's kind of set scheduled, everyone does their thing. And then we don't really reflect on how it went until maybe after, maybe like at a meet or something. But yeah, I love that you're able to notice those things from the two different sets and still have God at the center of what you do. So I wanted to ask you, um, did you have to overcome the struggle with creating for the world versus creating for Christ? Because I know that I struggled with that a bit when I was in college.
Yeah, I think the most like clearest time that I can think about that I've struggled with that is actually probably right now
Mm.
with Littlejoy Media with what I'm trying to accomplish with this company and just serving my clients in the best way that I can. I think a lot of the times, different mentors will give me advice and I'll learn different things from like the secular world of like how, things should go. And then I'll look at what I'm doing right now and be like, okay, I have to do this, this, and this, but what if it doesn't accomplish what it's supposed to do? And then I have to come back to the drawing board and just remember like what is my purpose here? Why am I doing this? Technically, this isn't actually like my own company. It's not really solely mine. Like the way that I view it is that it's God's company and I am
Mm.
just here to curate it. And when I remember that and I remember like what I'm here to do for him and like his kingdom, that gives me like this peace and this like this feeling of I don't need to be burdened by whatever outcome is going to happen with this company because I'm not really in control of it. Like God is in control of it. And like when the outcome isn't when you aren't in control of the outcome, then you don't need to be burdened by it. Like
Mhm.
so that's like I would say that's like a huge, huge thing for me right now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. What are some resources that you loved learning from and would recommend us? And this can be anything from like creative wise to like faith based.
Yeah, I wow, there's a lot. I would definitely encourage creatives out there to check out Eight Parables.
Yes.
Rosie and I have been a part of them for a couple years now, eightparables.com and Eight Parables on Instagram. I also am a huge fan of Wong Fu Productions because they are Asian American and their content is usually centered around like Asian American like culture, like fun things like dating, like views on that. And there are like a couple of podcasts that I listen to right now. Actually, Rosie has inspired me to listen to more podcasts. There's one Whoa, That's Good podcast is a pretty
Yes,
good
so
one.
good.
There's also The Porch is a
Yes,
great podcast.
my fave.
Right, right, right. And Christine Kane on Instagram, she is also the founder of A21, which is one of the largest anti-human trafficking nonprofits out there. Her Instagram's great. It's very uplifting. She posts really uplifting content and is really inspiring when it comes to like faith-based media and whatnot. So definitely go check those out.
Awesome. I will put a link down below as well for if anyone wants to like click on it, or just get to even, check those sources out. But how can we connect with you and how can we support you, Grace?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. I think so my company Littlejoy Media has a Facebook page, Littlejoy Media. We have an Instagram also at Littlejoy Media. And I also have a personal Instagram, which you can follow. And yeah, I think essentially those are my you gotta cut that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Again, like I'll put those down below so that everyone can definitely go follow Grace. She's awesome. She's always doing something great. And so
Thank you, Rose.
of course. And do you have any words of encouragement you would give to someone who is struggling with their creativity and faith?
Yeah, I think I would go back to the first thing, or one of the first things that I said, Psalm 46:10,
Mm.
to be still and know that I am God. Well, not I, but He is God. The verse, be still and know that I am God. Because I think that there is more to it than like what people might think the first time that they think about it. Like I think when I think of stillness, it's like you are still being proactive, you are still trying your best, you are still putting forth the effort and being, like doing the things, being proactive. But that also doesn't mean that you have to like stress about what's going to happen, stress about the outcome, or if something doesn't go the way that you want it to, like, you can still relax and just rest in his peace because
Mm.
he's got this. And I think one of the best uh, life tips that I've ever gotten was that if you are stuck between two choices, you don't know which one to choose, to always choose the one that is going to like require more faith in God out of you and you can never go wrong.
So
So
good.
leave
Yeah.
you with that.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much. And thank you so much for being on this podcast with me.
Yeah.
I
Thank you
love
for
this
having me.
conversation. It's always a good conversation with you, Grace.
Yeah.
And just seeing where God is taking you in this life that He's given
Mhm.
us. And so, with that, this ends this episode. So, thank you so
Yay.
much. Have a
Yeah.
great day, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in on this episode of Turn on the AC. We hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we did. If you don't already, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and any other platforms that you're listening to. You can also follow me on Instagram at rose.xiong and Turn on the AC's podcast on Instagram at the.asian creatives. You can find and watch us on YouTube at rose.xiong. Leave us a comment, rating, and a review. And if you enjoyed this episode, share it with your friends and family. If you enjoy listening to Turn on the AC and would love to support us, you can give us a donation on Anchor. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you guys on our next episode. Bye, guys.